How do you feel about the use of artificial intelligence in the hiring process? Whether it sounds like a good way to remove human bias, a bad idea that could bake in machine bias, or something in between, if you're a follower of this topic or my podcast, then you've probably heard of my dear friend Hilke Schellmann. She's the author of The Algorithm, a book the Financial Times called one of the best business books of the year when it came out, and she joined me for a live taping at a bookstore in Manhattan. I'm Jennifer Strong, and this is Shift.
Now here on the steering column is a device called Auto Cruise. You simply set the speed you want.
Self-driving robo-taxis are already on the road in 2 U.S. cities.
As the disc rotates, a mirror reflects the light in the way that depends on how the signal was recorded.
This is the 100 terabyte. I present to you Electro, the Moto Man. Ladies and gentlemen.
I would say that one of my greatest skills is my ability to interact with humans.
This episode was taped in collaboration with All Tech is Human before a live audience in New York City. Do you wish your team could move at the speed of their ideas? Miro changes the game. Powered by AI, teamwork that normally takes weeks gets done in days, so your team can focus on building the right things and having AI available in a contextual, easy-to-apply way. It helps my team spend time on building and getting our work done, not digging for information. Miro doesn't replace the design tools your team loves, it's aligning before you need them. So help your teams get great done with Miro. Check out Miro.com to find out how. That's MIRO.com. Nobody likes doing the exact same thing over and over again. It's boring, and it makes it hard to focus. And did you know your IT team wastes half their day on repetitive tickets? I'm talking about things like resetting passwords, requests for access, onboarding new staff, and it's keeping them from doing the meaningful work they want to do. You know, the reasons they went to work for your company in the first place? While legacy players bolt AI onto their systems, Serval was built for agentic AI from the start. Your IT team just has to describe what they need in plain English, and Serval generates production-ready automations instantly. Serval guarantees 50% help desk automation by week 4 of your free pilot. And just imagine how much time and money this could save a growing company. Serval powers some of the fastest growing companies in the world, like Perplexity, Mercor, Verkada, and Clay. So get your team out of the help desk and back to the work they enjoy. Book your free pilot at serval.com/shift. That's serval.com/shift. Pilots are limited.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for coming out and braving the cold weather. Hilke, you're one of my dearest friends. I've had the great privilege of working on a number of projects on this very topic with you. But for people in the room who do not know about your book or your work, do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name is Hilke Schellmann. I'm an associate professor of journalism, and the last 8 years or so, I've dabbled in algorithms, and I wrote a book on AI in hiring and AI at work and AI for firing. And it all started previously. I've done a film out of Pakistan, and I did various documentary projects. But I took a Lyft ride in Washington, D.C. in 2017, and I asked the driver how he's doing, and he told me he had a weird day. And I was like, how so? He's like, I got interviewed by a robot. And I'd never heard of job interviews done by robots. This was in 2017, and I started digging, and out came 50,000 publications, a book, and all of a whole slew of work. And I'm still working on that and many other AI things. Yeah.
All right. So we're both journalists. We've worked together now several different places. At the Wall Street Journal, we worked on projects for the MIT Tech Review together. We're about to do a fellowship together at the Harvard's Berkman Klein Center. Since then, you've seen a lot of ways that AI gets used in hiring. Can you tell us about some of them?
So if anyone here has ever send their resume through LinkedIn or Indeed or any other, like what we call job platforms, today AI is being used on you. You probably suspect that, especially if you're in this room, you probably know that. And we know know that most Fortune 500 companies, I think at the time of when I wrote the book, I think it was 98%. It's probably now 100% that use AI in hiring, because since the dawn of job platforms, since LinkedIn and Indeed and the others started, it got very easy to apply. So a lot of people did, which is wonderful. Democratized hiring. On the flip side, hiring managers and HR folks have been complaining that they get so many applications. That has only gotten worse since the dawn of Gen AI, right? Because now we can use ChatGPT to help us with our resumes. Maybe this is finally the death of the cover letter. I hope so. But, so we see AI being used by folks who are applying and by hiring managers for much, much longer to see through the resumes. And when I talk to folks who get to actually look into the black box and see like, well, how are they, filtering these and classifying these resumes? Who gets to be on the top? Who gets to be at the bottom? What was interesting, it wasn't always like you would suggest. You would think maybe that like, I don't know, they're hiring for a software developer. So everyone who has Python is like on the highest. It turned out that like other words like the word Thomas. So if you had the word Thomas on your resume for one job, you were predicted to be successful. So you got like a leg up. If you had certain hobbies like basketball, baseball, you got a leg up. If you had the word softball on your resume in one instance, you got fewer points. If you had the word baseball, you got more points, probably indication of gender discrimination. What other things? Oh, locations, Syria and Canada were predictors of success. So they probably came to be because a lot of these tools are trained by taking people's resumes that are already in the job. So those are like sort of deemed successful employees, and we want to replicate whatever they have in common, the magic juice, whatever that is. And we let an AI system dive into it and find out what do they have in common. And probably the AI tools did what they did best. They did a statistical analysis, and it turns out that people with the name Thomas, or they worked for Thomas Industries or whatever, I don't know, were really successful here. So that was then an indicator of success. We see this again and again. You'll hear this many times probably today, that if you don't look inside the tools and look what kind of keywords are being used, you find often these proxies that could be discriminatory, right? Like locations. Also, we have a law in this country that you're not allowed to discriminate based on national origin. If you prefer people with the word Canada on your resume, that could be a problem. So that's one of the things I found. And then also in one-way video interviews, has anyone done a higher view interview in this room? Yeah. My students have all done higher view interviews and others where there's no one on the other side. And you get like sort of a video of somebody saying, hey, it's so nice to meet you. We're from this company. Tell us, what are your strengths and weaknesses? And then you record yourself. So we see that a lot. And now that's being enhanced by generative AI avatars. So you might encounter an avatar soon that will chat with you and sort of, I was on the Brian Lehrer show, and one of the listeners called in and they said it was like eerily human because that avatar knew more than most people in a job interview. So they really like that.
Well, the one-way interviews I've been doing radio and podcast work for about 30 years now. And there is a thing if you're standing in a room by yourself, talking to yourself, where you don't really sound like yourself. And it's a kind of a weird experience until you get sort of used to that job. Now, doing a job interview where no one's asking you anything and you're just talking to yourself and there's no feedback, somebody is interested, they want more from you, they need less, they're reading you. Like right here, yeah. I can look at you and I can say, oh, they're bored, or, oh, they're interested, right?
Yeah.
The avatar edition is, maybe progress and maybe not.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it's just much more personable. The one thing that I'm a little worried about, and when I just went to HR Tech, it wasn't clear to me what happens on the back end. How are these tools scored? Because now the one good thing about one-way video interviews are actually that they introduce structured interviewing. I didn't know what that means. It means that everyone gets asked the same question, right? Because it's a video and you got to ask the same 4 questions. That actually reduces human bias by a lot. Because in job interviews, we love to chit chat and say like, oh, you went to the same school. That's so cool. That's great, except that introduces a lot of human bias because now the hiring manager sees you like, oh man, you know my sister. That's so cool. So structured interviewing actually takes that out. So that's actually kind of a good thing. The problem is if you have an avatar starting to ask all kinds of different questions and give you different answers, I'm sort of like, does that take away the structure? So
right, to be continued. You've seen a lot change over the course of your time doing this. Certain things I assume are better at this point. For those of us in the room old enough to have made a resume where you wanted it to have a really like flowery language and a beautiful font, and you designed it with maybe columns and other flourishes. And then, fast forward to today, you put it through a resume parser and it might just see a blank page because it can't read any of that stuff. Did that get better yet?
I mean, it got a little better, but it still is happening. So like the problem is not like sort of complex AI in a lot of hiring. It's actually sort of basic AI and that can even inflict a lot of trouble. So people sort of tell you, like sometimes you're asked to upload your resume and your cover letter, and sometimes you get a glimpse into the system because the system will tell you, here's what I think is your work experience. Here's what I think is like your personal data. Really check that very closely because that actually gets a lot of mismatches. So if you see a mismatch, there's probably something wrong with the formatting of your resume or with the tool. We don't know, but it might be worth it to sort of tinker with that because there is still a problem with that. Getting the information in the right form or in the right row is actually like surprisingly difficult. So I always like tell people, check that out. There's also AI tools online where you can upload your resume and the job description. It will tell you like for most resume scanners, you probably have like 80% overlap. You want to aim for like 80, 90% overlap, not 100% because some AI tools will throw you out because they think you just copied the job description.
And I have seen on my own resume uploads times where there were jobs generated, I would assume, or maybe it was trying to pattern match and they were trying to figure out something for my resume. And I was like, that is not a place I've ever worked or a job I've ever done. So yes, read it very closely. And also where the dates you worked there wind up being the job you had or other things get moved around.
Yeah. Also, don't be cute. Like some people try to put synonyms, like words in the job description, or don't do that. Like some computer tools do recognize that and some don't. And we don't know what companies use. So it's always good to use the keywords from the job description. But I think everyone knows that.
The other things we've seen change, video hiring also is, I don't want to say scaled back, right? We're no longer trying to figure out whether somebody's smile is...
Oh, yeah. That was at the very beginning. Companies used facial expression analysis, intonation of our voices. And I have to say, like in early 2018, when I went to my first conference, I was like, whoa, who knew that like facial expression analysis shows you how good you'll be at a job? Wow, I didn't know that. Let's verify. Let's talk to some experts. So I called some experts and they're like, I don't know what these people are doing, but there was no science here. Like we don't know what facial expressions in a job interview predicts how good you'll be at the job. And the good thing is like we had a story in the Wall Street Journal. There was another story in the Washington Post. There was an epic complaint again with the FTC against the company, and they stopped using the facial expression analysis. I sometimes feel like AI in hiring is a little bit like a whack-a-mole because what happens is like, so one big player stops using something and then someone else somewhere in this world has another good idea 6 months later. And it's like, you know what? We have this facial technology, this expression analysis technology. We should really use that for hiring. And then they come up with the next tool where you just feel like, no, we just have proven that this cannot work. But what really gives me hope is like at the beginning when I show like some of the clips in 2018, people found it really interesting and didn't know this was happening. And today, people watch it and they're like, oh my God, this is like ripe for bias. Like, I can't believe it. And I was like, oh, okay. So we've come really far in those years. Like things have really changed the public opinion around these tools.
Well, there's also whole university courses on how to work with, get around, deal with some of these systems. Now, Hilke, you were probably one of the first journalists I knew trying to, like we were talking about black boxes, you were one of the first to try to really get inside, in part because you're both a journalist and you're at a research institution, and that helps to be able to get access to these labs and things. But let's talk about some of that because, yes, trust but verify, and journalists over your career will see all kinds of very interesting and strange things. But boy, some of the things we've seen have been the strangest.
Have been wild. So I always try to figure out, like, how does the system work, right? And I think if I can do it, anyone can do it. Like I can code, I have a computer science degree. So if I can like sort of tinker with the tools and sort of get a little glimpse into how they function, you all can do it. So what I did is for most of the tools, the companies want sales. So they often have like a 2-week free trial, 7 days free trial. So I signed up with my name. I got the free trial. And then I was like, okay, let's do this job interview. Let me, I have so many videotapes of myself doing these job interviews in my tiny office, trying to sound very excited. And then I tried to like understand, like, how does it function? Like, what can I do to like prod the algorithm a little bit? So I remember doing one where it just said probably 70 or so times, I like teamwork. And I just said like, I like teamwork. I love teamwork. I like teamwork to all of the questions. And I was surprised that I got a pretty high percentage that I'm very qualified for this job. And I was like, wow, I really didn't really say anything. I mean, I did say something. trying, but I don't think it's materially relevant for the job. I was like, oh, that's surprising. And then I thought, we all worried about, so what happens is like the AI tools don't use the audio recording or the video recording, whatever it is, to predict on it. They do a transcription. And I sort of think about that as like the plumbing of the internet. No one thinks about it. But like, what is with the transcription? People like me who have an accent, people who have a speech disability, like with these tools, treat everyone the same way. So I started talking about that to the companies, and they're like, oh yeah, we have that all built into the algorithm. You have to get to a certain threshold. And if you don't get to it, somebody else will be in touch. And I was like, okay, I don't know what the threshold is, but sounds interesting. So I thought, like, let's test it. So I didn't want to fake like a speech disability. So I thought I will just speak German, because clearly that will be totally garbage, gibberish, and I will get an error rate because clearly I'm not going to meet that threshold. So I spoke German to the tool, sent it out, and then I got a reply back that I'm 73% qualified for the job. And in one of the tools, I actually got a transcription of what I said. So I was trying to make sense of like the German sounds. And it was like, sociology doesn't iron, nematode, da la la. I mean, it was just a total gibber. It was like unclear what I was saying, but I was very qualified. And we did this then, I got like my Chinese student to do it. We got my Vietnamese student to do it in Vietnamese, all kinds of different languages. Because I was like, because I called one of the developers and they were like, yeah, it's because like in this 5D space, German is next to English. And I was like, you've lost me. I don't know what 5D is. Like, I'm really sorry, sir. I really don't understand. And that took me a while to develop that, to just sort of be like, I really don't have a clue. And if you can't explain this, I think it's a problem. And I sort of said, like, what would you say in front of a judge? Like, why did I get a 73%? Can you just tell me that? And I got the 5D answer, and I was like, okay, I'm beyond.
Wasn't one of them like one of the ones you tested for like call centers for English proficiency, and you were testing in foreign languages and you got like a good score at English, speaking German and Chinese?
Yeah.
There was something used in like dozens of countries.
Yeah. The other one was used by 5 million people before. So like, you get access to these tools. Yeah. Sometimes it's kind of like sort of fun and interesting to talk about these anecdotes, but I do feel sort of the mission for me behind it is like, it matters if you get a job that you like. Like, it matters that you have a job to put food on your table, that you can feed your kids, you have a roof over your head. And then most of us spend a lot of time at work, and, it can be a source of like deeply, deeply distressing, but it can also like be an incredible source of happiness if you have a good job. So it matters. And I sort of felt like, some of the job interviews in my life, I've been really nervous because I really wanted this job. It meant a lot to me. And I think we sort of forget that in hiring often, that like, yes, there are a lot of applicants, but it means a lot to us to get that job and to find a job that really does suit us.
Do you wish your team could move at the speed of their ideas? Is it challenging to know if you're focused on the right thing? The gap between idea and impact is killing your team's progress, and simply throwing AI at a problem without clarity doesn't help. It makes your whole process messier. Miro changes the game. Powered by AI, teamwork that normally takes weeks gets done in days, so your team can focus on building the right things and having AI available in a contextual, easy-to-apply way. It helps my team spend time on building and getting our work done, not digging around for information. And Miro doesn't replace the design tools your team loves. It's aligning before you need them. You can also test concepts rapidly with Miro prototypes by generating instant and contextually embedded prototypes from your board without needing to do it elsewhere. And you can iterate rapidly on near limitless variations while feeling confident about feasibility and visualization before you get into the high-fidelity builds. Plus, AI sidekicks can work like product leaders, agile coaches, or product marketers to review your materials. They can recommend areas to double down, clarify inputs, and/or add direct feedback. And you can build custom versions of these sidekicks that integrate right into workflows for exactly what your team needs. Think of it as an extension of your team's capabilities versus a replacement. So help your teams get great done with Miro. Check out Miro.com to find out how. That's MIRO.com.
Comfort is often the first thing we're willing to give up. But don't let style be the reason you aren't comfy. Mack Weldon's Ace collection makes it effortless to look put together while feeling truly comfortable. Inspired by their best-selling sweatpants, the Ace collection combines everyday comfort with long-lasting and confident looks. Upgrade your collection for the new year with new bomber jackets, half-zips, sweats, crew necks, and much more. Go to MackWeldon.com and get 20% off your first order of $125 or more with promo code MAC25.
Among the things I found interesting, I'm thinking of that same CEO, when you called the company to tell them what you found and try to understand, and wasn't the call center CEO, one of them who said to us, oh, our customers are thrilled. They find they're hiring people outside of what they normally would. And I thought, going back to your point, like, is that really okay? Is that really ethical? If you are, in terms of consumer protections or other protections, if you purchase a product to do a specific task and it actually doesn't check your English for an English proficiency test, like, is it cute and funny that you're hiring people outside of your usual? Or is this like really actually a consumer protections problem? But fast forward, all these things you've seen and some of the evolution, the ways in which it's being used, do you have particular feelings on ways it should not be used?
Yeah, I mean, sort of the facial technology, obviously, the intonation of voice analysis also has no research behind it, right? Like, I do also think, I sort of describe it as like, I feel like the first wave of AI tools in hiring, what really happened is like a lot of bad processes were automated. Like, it turns out your resume is actually not that predictive of success in the job. Neither is your personality, very low prediction rates. But companies love to use it. You know, and they ask you, like, you've been sad the last 2 months, or like all of these questions. Also veers into medical territory, which really should be, somebody should look in there legally, because that is really not allowed. So I hope that like companies will take this and sort of understand, hey, maybe we need to change things here. And this will come as a shock to no one. The best predictor of success in the job is have you do the job. That is unfortunately not doable for most companies, to hire 100 people and then let 99 go. But I sort of felt like, well, why can't we have like assessments that are actually about the skills you need at the job, that are, it's sort of maybe virtually showing you the job so you get a sense of like, what is actually happening with this company, and leave out some of the more problematic things. So are job interviews. They're also not very predictive. It's always about, we call it the confidence versus competence problem. You might sound very confident talking about something, and that sort of signals competence to humans. And then you show up on the first day of work, and it's kind of a problem. You may not be that person. So yeah, those are kind of things.
Or versus, you mean how fast you can pop endless blue bubbles?
Oh yeah, I popped so many balloons. There's a game that was, has anyone done the Pymetrics? It's not Harvard. It's like, oh yeah. So you've popped those balloons or not. You try to not pop them and collect the money. And that was supposedly finding how risk averse, what your propensity for risk was. Lots of investment banks loved that tool for young graduates. So we see like a little bit of change in the field. Like, I've had a lot of folks, chief people officers, after the book came out, come to me and be like, oh yeah, we have the same problems that you describe in the book. And we found the same problems, that the tool would not be including women and la, 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 la. And so we don't use it anymore. And I was like, that's great. I'm really glad to hear that. I think you should also publicly talk about that, so that the next company does not buy the tool again. And they're like, oh yeah, we can't. Like, you know, they're afraid of liability, right? That like all the women that applied last year will sue them. I think there's also something that like usually in companies, there's like a champion who like, you know, these are often big investments. And then it's kind of embarrassing to say 3 years down the road, like, yeah, that big deal that we sold everyone, that kind of didn't work.
And yet some companies do. I mean, I'm thinking Amazon in particular, when they tested an internal system and it didn't work, they didn't release it. And they also went and told people, by the way, here are some of the problems. Thinking in particular, a problem of not selecting female resumes, in part because the resumes they were trained on were mostly men.
Yeah, and I think they unfortunately got so much flack for that no company now
is ever going to admit or disclose. This is how we'll learn. As I say way too often, we needed to drive cars to realize that seatbelts would be a great addition and be helpful. And so we're going to learn things as we go here. And we have to be able to use that knowledge, right? Somehow.
Yeah. So like benchmarking would be great. Like, it would be great to have standards. It would be great to have independent testing. You know, we don't see a lot of, obviously, appetite on the federal level on this. We see a little bit of appetite on the state and local level. We have a law in New York City that is one of the only laws on AI and hiring. I'm going to say that it doesn't have any teeth, has no enforcement of what we know of, and very few companies have publicized their results from the audits that they are supposed to do every year. And I think the problem is because it puts the onus on the company. They can decide how much AI they use and if they fall under the law. And that's kind of problematic, the way the law was conceived. And I think it's always difficult for me to speak to like individuals because they're like, what should we do? And I'm like, it's really hard. I mean, if you want the job, it's really hard to say no to the link that they send you, right? Because you want the job. I think one thing is that if you do have a disability under the American with Disabilities Act, you are entitled to reasonable accommodation. I understand that people with disabilities don't necessarily want to disclose that disability, but you could ask for a reasonable accommodation, and often you will get a human to do the interview or do a test with you or something like that. And then I also think we just need like more awareness and pushing onto government and representatives, because otherwise we're sort of forced consumers of this technology, right? Like I'm trying to get Consumer Reports and others to test this technology and like really have standards and like do this en masse and look at all these tools. But, it's not really consumer technology. They say, I think it is because we're forced to use it, but I think there's way more to do there.
Well, you're not going to say something like this, so I'll say it for you. Like the law in New York, as well as changes to the EEOC, are really related to your work. Like this is change that you've brought.
Oh. I did talk to the EEOC a lot. And one of the things they did also ask me, like, yeah, what's with the transcription? Like, what is with people with an accent or a speech disability? And I was like, why are you asking me? Like, you have like 3,000 people on payroll. I'm one person. But I sort of felt like, oh, well, I don't know if they're going to look into this. They're an agency or commission, like who knows how they work internally. So those are kind of things when I did the German speaking or, I love teamwork, those were like springboards because, those are just really anecdotes. I mean, they sort of point into like probably this algorithm has real problems. We really shouldn't be using it. But it also sparked conversation with computer scientists and sociologists and others. And I built these teams around these like applied questions from the field that I get to ask as a journalist that I'm like, we really need to look into these transcription softwares, how good they work. So I called the companies, asked them like, what transcription software do you use? And then we found a data set of about 13,000 audio recordings, about half of people with a speech disability, in this case, aphasia that often people develop after they have a stroke. And then the other half were people that don't have speech disability, ran those through all of these transcription tools. And yes, there is a problem for people with a speech disability, but probably to no one's surprise, they do have less high scores, but I also wanted proof. I mean, I hope that people will like sort of act on it. That's sort of the next step.
Well, speaking of next steps and springboards, as stories tend to do, lead you to more stories and more ideas and those interconnected webs of things to talk about. What's next?
So like one of the things that I talked about in the book, like I love this AI accountability work. It's going to go on. I'm thinking about new books that I'm writing. And one is maybe AI in healthcare, AI in education. I think those are two critical places as well. But I was also thinking like, oh, this needs a little bit more robust approach. Like we need to like benchmark these tools. So I've been starting benchmarking tools for journalism because AI tools is sort of like benchmarking, but the tech companies do it and they sort of build their tools around the benchmark to score higher and higher, but they really don't have any applications for journalism, like accuracy. I don't care about that. We really care about that. So I started benchmarking tools and a lot of journalists were like, oh, this is actually really helpful. Because I was like, we sort of tinker at night, like, oh, what am I going to do for my summarization? Like, should I do this tool or this tool? And there's actually, you can run experiments and figure that out. The same goes for healthcare. There's a lot of AI in healthcare that goes largely untested. They also need benchmarking help. That's one other thing. And then currently I'm a fellow at Princeton, and I think we have a lot of conversations there with like other interdisciplinary teams. And somebody was giving a talk about companion chatbots and how she has done like sort of a longitudinal study and found out that one of the problems is people see their social lives change when they anthropomorphize a chatbot. They see more change in their social life. So when they give it like human-like qualities, sort of describe it as a friend and then I saw another researcher talking about how she teaches kids about Gen AI and how they can build their own little chat GPTs and sort of understand the limits and how the tools work. So I was like, wait a second, like these two people need to be in the room and we need to like figure this out and help understand kids how Gen AI works and how companion chatbots work and how companies build these tools to get you to engage and engage and engage. And hopefully by learning how these tools work, you create like maybe that the hope is to create that little critical distance that then when you engage in companion chatbots, you maybe not see them as your lover or your friend, or you have that critical distance. So we're also thinking like, okay, let's do that. Let's figure this out.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for being here.
Yeah.
This episode was produced by me and Emma Cillekens and mixed by Garret Lang, with original music from him and Jacob Gorski. Thanks for listening. I'm Jennifer Strong.